suppliers for consortium deals that the universities could access. And we've also been doing a lot of capacity through webinars. We are also learning that mother is the necessity of innovations. I think for a long time we've been trying to push universities to progress the digitization of their teaching, learning and research, and we thought they were not moving fast enough. We also thought maybe it's a leadership issue. We needed more charismatic leaders to be able to move this agenda. But COVID has taught us that when there's a need, people or institutions are likely to listen. But we are seeing our universities in Africa not so prepared, especially in terms of handling emergency responses. We ran a survey with the universities, and they told us that the biggest challenge was responding fast enough so that they don't lose time. And we saw, however, that they handled international students very well. And we also learned that some universities said they would be teaching fully. The majority said they would be teaching partially, and there was quite a big number which said we've closed and we are not teaching. The tools that universities are using, as the last presenter said, they are using email, they are using WhatsApp, they are using Google Classrooms, they are using Zoom. And in terms of content, even though there's content out there from edX, Coursera, and the like, our universities are not yet using that. So we are trying to find a way to get them to look at that content and select what could be us or manufacturing hand sanitizers. In terms of high-level research to find a cure, we find that there are a few universities involved. Most of them are delegating their staff to part in national initiatives. So in conclusion, I think we agree that infrastructure is a big issue. Institutionalization of online education is important. Even when COVID goes, we need to have blended approaches to teaching and learning. We think our universities should consider sharing infrastructure on the cloud in order to reduce costs so that they don't all do their own small things. Training, I think, is very important, and our curricula has been challenged. It must be skills focused. The way that we examine must be different. We must have different ways of assessing whether learning has happened. And then offline learning solutions are also becoming very important. Radio, TV, podcasts, sending to students that have no connectivity. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ndumo, for kind of summarizing this conversation. I don't see that anyone has a direct question to you. Maybe your role was more to break, and we'll return 10 past the hour. In Sweden it's 12:10, and I'll stay on here if anyone wants to chat, but I encourage all of you to stretch and do what you need to do to be refreshed back here 10 past the hour. So see you soon.
we can come back to this, from time to time. We can come back to clarify all of this. We are going to get to a point where all of us, we have to go back to our concept note and say, okay, now I have come. Concept note. Where is the X here? What is my Y here? And what really am I talking about? And one thing you will see and do and all of that, so note will not recognize itself. And that is perfectly in agreement with what we want. We want people to be able to notice change and growth. So don't say, my concept note, I have submitted it, is in the record of Pascal. I can't change anything. That concept note is yours, but then it should not remain like that. So this is essentially what I finished explaining, isn't it? That we will establish causality requires thinking about what an outcome would have been if the cause were not to be there. So, but again, it's a bit sometimes quite tricky. I just harassed Valence a little bit now when he said the cause of the problem is people bringing refuse. But then, should they have eaten the refuse? No. Now, whose work was it to have you say, okay, it's the county governor or something, or county government. Yeah, but then somebody else, county government will say, look, we have the capacity to dispose of X tons. And that's why we appeal to farmers. Process your food there before you bring it. Bring only the bananas. Don't bring the stalk that is holding the bananas together. I was in Ngong and I saw that trucks were coming with only stalks of bananas. And they were whole trucks filled with, and that was the only thing they were. So imagine if the farmers had disposed of that in the, so can you also see that the farmers are also guilty, right? Yeah. Now, farmers will say that if we do it, they will say our bananas are not fresh. Say these customers, these people, they are not kind with us farmers. So you see, we can keep going and keep going and keep going. So how do we then pinpoint a cause? Sometimes when I read Sloman, I like to read Sloman. And if you have read him only once, when you are not busy, try and read him again for entertainment. He has a way of spinning things. Yes. Yeah. At the end, you will feel, okay, now, is this guy saying we can never be sure what a cause is? Because he will make you feel like that. But that is not his intention. And maybe it's worth reading the whole book. I'm not suggesting that. But so it can be a bit tricky. And that is what we'll spend the next so slides just trying to pin down. What should we note? What should be at the back of our mind before we say this is a cause? And that is not a cause. First is that whether we like it or not, we have to decide where we put our analytical brakes. If not, now somebody has injury in a factory, not here. The question we'll ask. I mean, this guy left home in the morning, everything was okay, and then he comes back with POP, plaster of Paris, and the first question the neighbors will ask is, what happened? Then he says, I fell. So fall is the cause, right? Injury is the effect or the outcome. Now, but then this fall was caused because he slipped. Now, normally when people are not drunk and they don't sleep anyhow, I mean, I know accidents happen. This guy slipped because the surface was wet. The cleaners, they always put something there, wet surface, But then the surface was not wet on its own. Surface will say, well, but it is not my fault. It is because there is a valve up there that is leaky. So oil came from this valve, ran on this surface. This guy was just going, the guy slipped, then he fell, and then the fall caused the injury. Now, leaky valve say, yeah, but don't blame me. This seal is supposed to have been replaced, but they didn't replace it. So it's still failure. And they say, seal, why did you score F9? Why did you fail? And they said that because I'm not maintained. So you see, we can keep going back until we get to Adam and Eve, and then Adam said, well, it's the woman you gave me. So, and then the woman says, it's the serpent. And serpent, yeah. So I wonder, yeah, God is. So we need to say, okay, all right, now, wait, I can't, this is Dandora, or this is inter-ethnic violence, or this is poverty rate, or, yeah, so this is something I'm trying to study. Now, for how long, how far back in the past should I go? So the analyst has to decide that, okay, well, all right. Okay, all of you stop there, You know when the serpent said, well, yeah, when the woman said it's the serpent, God said, okay, I know the game. You will keep going. No. He didn't even talk to the serpent. So because serpent would have mentioned something and it will really not end, it's like our movies, Nollywood movies. When they don't know where to start, they say, watch out for part 2. And then you wonder, can this have a part 2? Seems this story is confused and confusing. So now, as an analyst, I need to, Joyce may be interested in, I have not read your mind or your concept note, but if Joyce is interested in, I don't like bad example, I was going to say inter-ethnic violence. But then, so you see, what caused this is, yeah, so you may be able to find a cause, and then find a cause that caused, we can begin to trace that to amalgamation, 1914. If these different groups were allowed to go their separate ways, there would not have been these clashes. But then, so the question I sometimes ask myself is, okay, so what really do I think needs to be corrected? We cannot correct amalgamation. We cannot correct independence. We cannot correct the 1991-99 Constitution. You know what I mean? So really, where can we begin to intervene or interfere maybe? That may give me an idea of what my X should be, where really I need to apply my analytical breaks. So that is the first thing we need to ask. Where really do I stop in my analysis? The second is we need to understand that the tricky difference between causation and correlation. Almost everywhere you turn, they say causation is not correlation. Yeah, causation is not correlation. But then let them continue talking. Then they are attributing causation to correlative factors. Correlation says these two factors appear to be going together. Right? So the more money is put into education, the better performance of students at high school exam. Okay. So budgetary allocation goes up, performance at O-level exams also goes up. Budgetary allocation goes up, performance goes up. If that is all we know, we are discussing correlation. Two things going together, or going down together, or going up together. That is correlation.
They may go together up.
Yeah.
They may go together down.
Yes.
One may go up.
Yes. Okay. Help us to go bit by bit. Valence. Now, budgetary allocation goes up, performance goes up. Yeah. Or if that is all we know, that is correlation. Budgetary allocation goes down, performance goes down. If that is what we know, that is correlation. Budgetary allocation goes up, but then performance also continues to go down because now teacher salaries have been increased, and instead of spending time teaching these kids, they go outside to eat pepper soup and to enjoy. So performance goes down, budgetary allocation keeps going up, and they are going in different directions. Honestly, that is also correlation. They will say that is negative. Increase in one is generating decrease in the other. All of that is correlation. That's not causation. It is the same thing here that fooled the lion. The lion was hungry, he saw the rabbit, he grabbed the rabbit, wanted to eat him, and the rabbit said, no, okay, come on, bros. You can't eat me. I know you are strong and you are the king of the jungle and everything, but I know you are not a cannibal. You don't eat your own members of your own family. And lion said, no, but you are not a member of my family. He said, but I am. Me. And lion said, then prove. He said, yeah, I am, because anywhere other animals see me, they run. And lion said, yeah, if that is true, then you must be. But I want you to prove it. And so they went, and all the animals saw them and ran. And rabbit said, bros, you see? They are running away from me. Lion said, no, I want a repeat of this experiment. Then they went to another place, they saw animals, saw them, and then they fled. They said, how many times do you want us to do this before I convince you? They said, one more time. Okay, yeah, let's go. Then they went, and then animals saw them, then they fled. Lion said, I'm so sorry for all the troubles I've caused you, my brother. I didn't know that we are from, and how come I didn't know all this? Yeah, okay, so go in peace, bye-bye. So, Lion interpreted correlation as causation. Their appearance correlated with the fleeing of the other animals. So they appear, animals fled. But that is correlation. Then Lion said, Rabbit tricked him to understand that correlation as causation. I am appearing and I am scaring them, and then they are running away for their dear lives. I always like stories that end, positively. So I like this story. And honestly, I wish it will happen to every rabbit like this every time. Yeah. Again, which also says that repeat experiments will not necessarily prove causation if they are not well designed to prove that. So to move beyond this correlation, we need to establish what they call Z, a causal pathway or a causal mechanism that says this is how this produces that. So imagine Lion then says, okay, I want you to show me how your appearance scares them. The humanities will know that in all African animal stories, the smaller animal is always the winner. Even in Tom and Jerry, yes. The animal is always smarter is always the winner. You see? Because, you see, most of these stories were composed by poor people. By weak people. It is their own way of experiencing justice that they do not experience in real life. So the king who is oppressing them, they call him lion. They won't call him his name. Then the weak people that are being oppressed, they call themselves rabbit. In Igbo languages, it's the tortoise. In Hausa, it is spider. No. Among the children of Anansi, yeah, it's spider, right? So it's always the smaller animal, and then in Yoruba, whatever, is, in Tiv, it is rabbit. And they always win. They never even die. They drop tortoise from the sky. Imagine. It landed here, broke its back. It never died. It's our own way of, we know we can't get justice in reality. So let's have it in our imagination. Yeah. But it's okay. Sorry? All right. This is counterfactual reasoning. What will happen if the kings, maybe, but they were very busy royal people and then grew up maybe in royal, or maybe they don't even know that these stories were pointing at them. Anyways, so that is the first thing. So to move from correlation to causation, we need that causal mechanism. That is very important. And we'll talk about it later. 3. The first one is we need to know where to stop. The second is that correlation is not causation. The third is when we think of a cause and an outcome, we must be very sure the direction of that arrow. When we say X is here and Y is there, then we usually draw that arrow like that. So we say X, hunger, Y fainting, and then we typically draw an arrow that starts here and points here. We have to be sure that that is where that arrow, in reality, it is where it is pointing. It is good once in a while to ask, can the arrow move backwards? Can it be the other way around? And in real life, sometimes we can commit that error. This study was conducted by these three people, and their title is, Are Women Really the Fairer Sex? Corruption and Women in Government. And they discovered that in countries where women in parliament are more, there is always low prevalence of corruption. And so women in parliament, this was the argument, low corruption. That these women make laws and run committees and they hold clinical accountable and all of this, and then corruption index is low. When it is the other way around, men, cover your face. You have men dominating the parliament and women like this. You see, this is how corruption will open its mouth wide.
It is to service the women.
It's just that, okay, now that is something you have said.
Where do we stop with this position?
Yeah, so we need, I wonder. But the good question we can ask is, could it actually be that women were able to get into parliament in the first instance because corruption was low in these countries? It's a possibility, isn't it? It's just to say we need to ask, could it have been the other way around? Could it have been the other way around? We need to, when we see this, when this is our finding, when this is what we see, when this is what we claim, we need to ask that question. Could it have been the other way around? If it could not have been the other way around, then we'll know indeed what we have identified is an X. Because it is possible that women see corruption is big and they say, no, I don't want to touch that. And so then they are not found in a good number in parliament. Does this make some sense? So it's just to say we need to always put on that our critical hat. To say, okay, yeah, I understand. It looks like this is the cause of that, but then maybe it is the other way around. Maybe that actually is the cause and this is the outcome. This example will help us to think a bit more about it. Somebody did a study in India and discovered that where there are inter-ethnic networks, you will find absence of inter-ethnic violence. In communities where you have PTA, we call them PTA in Nigeria, Parent Teacher Association. And in this PTA you have Hindus and you have Muslims in one PTA working together. Their aim is education of their children, right? But whenever violence comes, they are able to absorb it and you won't find violence in their community. In communities where you have PTA in Hindu chapter, PTA Muslim chapter operating regularly, when violence comes, it hits them. It's a big and interesting work that this guy did. So, presence of interethnic networks means leads to absence of interethnic violence. But can it be the other way around? Let's think about it. Is there a chance that it is the other way around? Sorry? It's possible. Yeah. Explain. Yes. There is a possibility. Okay, who else thinks there is a possibility? Yes, Nkechi. There is a possibility. Who else? Moses, yeah. Who is going to give us that possibility? Dio, yes. Who is going to volunteer to give us that possibility? Yes, Ronke.
I think it's as simple as the fact that they are able to have this inter-ethnic networks because they live in peace.
In the first instance. So there is, yes, Nkechi. Yeah?
I want to say the reverse.
Okay, say it.
As in, the presence of inter-ethnic network leads to this. Then absence of this can lead to presence of this.
Yeah, sure. That is what they are saying. We are imagining what Y would be without X, counterfactual situation. Yeah, so, but the point is, it's also possible that it's because of this, yeah, that this existed. So this guy's work, therefore, his headache, his assignment, and where he has everybody saluting him, was that he was able to prove that this was true, rather than the other way around. So he was able to show that this was the beginning of the story, and then it led to this, which led to that, which led to this. We can flip, but then this is not going to allow us to sound convincing if we ever imagine that this is the cause and that is the outcome. So part of our work as we think of cause and outcome is to think, could it have been the other way around? And we have to be able to convince whoever is reading us that it is indeed the way we say it is and not the other way around. You probably at some point wish to just go back to some of the comments you got on your journal articles when they were not accepted. And some of these may be the reason that, yeah, the argument is okay, but then it's not convincing. It's not convincing. And sometimes it's not convincing because we jump the in-between that connects the two. Which is why we really spend some time later talking about this in-between. We will we will spend some time now, the next couple of minutes, just trying to understand how we can represent some of these in what we call causal diagrams. Again, because there are some of us, everything is fine, well and dandy in prose. For other people, once they see it graphically, it sticks. So, and we'll be throwing in a few more terminologies as we move on. But let's know that this is not the process of us learning those terms. What matters is we understand them and they found their way in our research design. That is very important. Are there problems up to this point? Is it holding together? Is it making some sense? Yes. Okay. So let's look at what they call these causal diagrams or causal frameworks. Was it Nkechi that was telling us about something not long ago about confounding variables? I think she mentioned something like that. This is just trying to represent what we have been saying so far. It's a graphic illustration, for some, this is what is going to do it. So we're saying what we have here is an X. What we have here is a Y. This is trader money. And this is business growth. But then in between them, there is a Z, which is like a set of steps. So trader money led to increase in capital, which led to increase in wholesale stock, which led to something and then produces this one. Yeah. Now, somebody may say, the story did not start there. The story started with so experience in China, where somebody told the vice president, if you would distribute 10,000 naira each to the 1.5 million roadside traders, you will see economic improvement. So somebody will say, oh yeah, it is actually China experience that led to trader money in the hands of people and on and on. Some may say it's election desperation, you know. Yeah. But we're saying, just as we analyzed earlier on, that we have to decide on this phenomenon we're trying to explain. Where do we apply the analytic brakes? So, of course, we're not blind to the possibility of what they now call A, which is antecedent factor, which may be election desperation or China experience or something else. We know it may be there, and we are not ignoring its presence, but then our analytical takeoff is here. And then we are saying it's also possible that there are other factors that may have led to this, right? So we may say, yeah, it also may be because there is some entrepreneurial training that Center for Entrepreneurship and something, University of Nairobi also organized to roadside traders. So that may be other possible factors. And part of our work may then be to say whether these factors actually contributed or did not contribute. Some will say we can even statistically estimate the quantity of input that these factors have towards this. But what we are hoping to be able to say is that this leads to that through this mechanism. Again, as I said, it's just like, you know, trying to graphically represent what we have said. But we call this basic causal framework, meaning that it can be a bit more complex here. Does this basic causal network or framework, does it make some sense? Does this look like something we see on a daily basis, you know? Yeah. So now I tell my daughter, you were the cause of this problem because you put this thing there. Well, because you didn't know that I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, thinking of late salary or how a mechanic cheated me yesterday over my car or something else, she may accept. But we're saying that may also not be the complete story. Something else may have been. And then we have confounding variables that may come like agents of the evil one to confound our findings. Very often, these are hard to foresee. And very often, these can be foreseen and controlled. In the example I gave, if I want to find out whether, okay, so this is the China experience, it didn't exist, I just created it. And this is trader money, and trader money went through all those mechanisms, increased stock and so on and so forth, and produces this growth in business. Now I want to show if it's really like that. So then University of Nairobi says, yeah, we need a little share of that glory, people, because we ran entrepreneurship. Now, I think we have explained what goes on in between. And I like to again repeat that sometimes we have an idea of the X, even of the Y. But then connecting those dots through what some quantitative analysts would prefer to call moderating variables, what people will call chain of events, is sometimes what is really the work that we have to do. Before I ask questions, let me show an illustration of this. I know that the trader money has helped to make it a bit concrete. And remember that you are going to get copies of this slide. So let's assume that I am interested in finding out if school feeding program affects academic achievement. There is school feeding program now in Nigeria. Do you have school feeding program in Kenya? Do you still have it? Okay.
In the arid and the dry lands.
Okay. In the arid and dryland areas, we don't have it in all of Nigeria, for instance. We don't have it in the University of Ibadan, which is a pity. We have it only in selected states, and even then, I think it's only in primary schools. Selected primary schools. Not even in secondary school. Yeah, people will just keep failing primary 6. And a few private schools as well. Okay, I think that's really good. Now, let us say I want to find out how does school feeding program affect primary school students' academic achievement in Addis, or in Ondo State, or in, what is the county in Kenya? Makueni County. Let's say this is my research question. This is what this cursor diagram looks like. In journalism, they will say this is like your knot graph. This is what the cursor diagram really looks like. So I start my analytical thinking here. This is school feeding program, breakfast and midday meal, and better academic achievement. We seem to see it, maybe I already sense it, but then how? So school feeding program helps students to now be regular in school. Yeah, because they want to eat, and then it motivates students to want to come to school, and then they're able to concentrate. You know, as I said, this is going to be a set of chains, or a chain of steps. And then that led to that, and that led to better academic achievement. That would be a nice story, a nice causal story to tell. But then something may be nagging me at the back of my mind to say, well, sometimes will there be other factors that may contribute to this, or that may influence the extent to which school feeding program promotes this? Maybe years of schooling, maybe social background. Maybe, for instance, those who are able to eat 3 times a day at home, for instance, will not feel that motivation. Yeah. So, all of those possible other factors that may have contributed to better academic achievement. Research says children from high socioeconomic status seem to do better. So, these are things that I may have to factor into my analysis, because there are also other possible causes, as we call them. Now there are all these that when you design this project, for instance, you did not foresee. Nobody ever says, okay, I am going to factor disease outbreak into my analysis because it looks like there will be Ebola next year. We usually don't factor that into analysis when we want to design this kind of study. But then, so these are called confounding, how did you call them? Confounding variables, because they have also the power to undermine the explanation that we are trying to give. And then somebody looks back and say, school feeding program itself, yeah, is an X, but then there is always a background to it. Maybe it is really this background. Maybe it's a factor also that may have contributed to how this whole story works out. So all these are called antecedent factors, which may have led to the school feeding program, then which led to this and this and that. The purpose of this is just to simplify this complex idea of causation, and to help us understand, well, yeah, they are complex, but then they are also doable. I need to say that this looks like quantitative analysis alone, but as we will see later, when we get to MMS, mixed method studies, we will see that there is a lot of possibility and reality, really, where quantitative work and qualitative work together help us to understand causation. Okay, before I will say the next thing, let me hear, what do you think? Are there questions? Are there problems so far? Yeah? Yes, Perpetual.
If we know that all these other causes or possible causes could lead to the outcome, so how then do we identify the real cause
Okay.
of the outcome?
So that's a very good question of design. How do we have just said that these other factors are, we call them, possible factors, which we need to, other possible factors, which we need to, control for. So how do we, Crispin, you want to help us?
I wanted to say the social issues do not happen in isolation.
That is true.
So we can find the extent to which a factor is causing the other thing, but we cannot prevent the other issues from intervening or affecting the outcome. So we cannot conclude with a completely clear statement that this is the thing, there is nothing else is supposed to be. When we are dealing with the social issue that happens in the social environment where so many factors come into play.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other? How do we then say, for instance, sorry.
I think from what is
Moses, I know this is tough for you, but there are no SARs and profs here.
Well, I guess one of the things that emanates from what you said is by the time you are putting into consideration confounding factors, I think you are answering some of the issues he's raising about social factors not happening
In isolation, yes.
You may not really be able to think through every influences, but at the same time, one of the things you are doing, and that goes to design, and goes back to what Susan taught us in the morning, how much of thinking has gone into the design. So by the time you're designing, you're also asking the question, what other thing will have influenced? By the time you put a lot together, it might be possible to assume, yes, maybe still at the level of assumption, but it might be possible to assume that this may be the prominent cause. And there are also, what do I call it now? Softwares that can also allow us now to not only pick culprits of events, but also to find association between covariates and influencers.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. We will take, yes, Charles, yes.
Because the question is specific, how will you determine?
Yes, okay.
I'm thinking that maybe that now takes us to the level of actual hypothesis testing.
Okay, all right, thank you. So we can perpetuate, we can frame our research question and hypothesis in a way that when we are done, we'll be able to identify whether these are the factors or whether this is the factor. Our analysis will help us, but also how we design our work can help us. If I want to know whether age is responsible for better academic performance rather than school feeding, once I am aware of that possibility from the beginning, then I structure my work in a way that helps me to know. To check for age. And I think that's why they say there are factors that we control, because we're aware, remotely or not, aware of their presence somewhere. Okay, we will. I always love this slide. It's my best slide. Yes, please.
Okay, my question is this. In a situation whereby those that you got the information from, maybe they are somehow deceitful, like those ones that told you they gave them 10,000 and it was able to
by X1.
But maybe they're using it for political whatever. How do you now actually manage these things by, saying because they gave them 10,000, their business. What of if their business is moving fine?
Yeah.
But these people are just collecting this money just to make up, but they have other means of handling their or situation whereby maybe you are Mr. Questionnaire to get information. That
they're just feeling it anyhow.
They don't have where they will tell us that we detect only like in just few. You detect lies.
Yeah, we call them cheater items.
You detect, but not in all.
Yeah.
So in case of this seat, I it's not valid. I don't know what to do, whether it's valid or when there is no truthful.
Okay, well, I agree with you. It may be difficult, but then that, and if it is difficult, that is why we should do it. If it is not difficult, then we don't want to talk about it. We should not even bother, because as Hume we said, an author is to be valued, is to be little valued. Who tells us nothing but what we can hear in everyday coffee house conversation? So if it is the easy thing that everybody is saying, yeah, why should we do research about it? So this question you have asked is a question that is bothering the mind of every social science researcher. So a good thing we can do is to find out how have people been handling this kind of question. And I'll take one or two comments. Yes, Irene?
Yes, thanks. If you please go back to the previous slide.
This?
Oh, do you want me to?
Oh yes, I wanted you to answer the question.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you have a different...
Yes, I do, but I think the way I would go about it is to combine both a survey that gives me information about all the things that would usually be like, did you receive the money? Yes. How much of it? And then what is the outcome? And very basic information that is quantitative. But I would also go for qualitative. So that I triangulate some of that information.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that way, then you get explanations for things that not necessarily be explained by others.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. But now you had a question. Edwin, you want to respond to this question? Okay, quickly, please. I have a very urgent announcement to make.
All right. I'm also meant to understand that there are different ontologies in research.
Yeah.
For example, when you have a positivist and a constructivist looking at causal effects, they are going to have different responses on where to stop.
Okay.
A constructivist might be a little humble and say, you know what, there are so many factors that can lead to this, but I'll restrict myself to this couple and see how they
go. Yeah.
But positivist will want to. An extreme positivist will want to account for every possible factor. So it depends on where that spectrum is.
Okay. And there are, for the positivists, well, we try to run away from these dichotomies. They have also sophisticated tools to measure the potential contribution of any one of these factors too. Yeah. Okay. Irene, is it possible to take up your question when we come back?
Yes.
Is that? Yes. Or maybe you ask it now and then we answer it when we come back.
Okay. I was thinking about the question itself, the research.
Okay, yes.
How does the school feeding program affect primary school students' academic achievement in And that question in itself would immediately perhaps be obviously assuming that you're looking at just this line. And then when you start answering it, you're encountering those other factors. So I'm going back to maybe what Evan is asking.
Okay.
Where do you draw the line in terms of designing your inquiry? Because the question is very broad and it can give you so many causal factors.
Yeah. I think this is a question for the afternoon, because even sometimes when you have done all your literature and all your reading, this storyline, I like to call it storyline, appears this way. But sometimes when you get to the field or when you are back with your data, they take a different shape. So the next session is actually to develop our sensitivities to these possible shapes or forms or notions that causation may take. Yeah. Okay? So you already leading us, but I want you to now stand up and lead us to lunch, because you are leading us to the next session already. I think we need lunch before the next session. All right, thank you very much, and bon appetit.
Shortly, we'll be speaking with one of our key facilitators for this training, and he happens to be one. Let me just put it so straight. He's the brain behind some of the models that we have seen today, and we are privileged to be speaking to him, for him to share a lot of insight with us and his experience as well throughout the entire journey. Prof, you're welcome to your television.
Thank you very much.
Great. So you would have to tell us your name, okay, and then your university, and something brief that you want to share with us before we even go into the full conversation.
My name is Ayo Bami Ojebode. I am from the University of Ibadan in Nigeria. I am currently the head of Department of Communication and Language at University of Ibadan. And I've been a facilitator on this program. First, I was a trainee and then a facilitator. I've been a facilitator since 2014.
Yes. Great. So yesterday during the official opening, when your name was mentioned, I could hear the resounding applause. Why do you think people were just giving you that kind of applause? I was very curious, and I'm still curious to find out why.
Well, it's I really wish we could ask them why they applauded. I can only guess. It's hard, I think. I mean, I guess in the audience there were many people that knew me and I had interacted with, and I think they have pleasant feelings about me, and so they say, "Oh yeah, that is him." Who? Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, I can't say why they applauded. It probably was for good, but maybe not totally. I don't know.
Okay, so one of the key things we picked had to do with the impact stories that people could share with us based on the level of knowledge and the experience that we've passed on as a lecturer in this university. In terms of research, what would you share with us as academics? What is the real gap in research in Africa, and what is PASGA doing to fill this gap as well?
Well, I think in Africa, the state of research in Africa calls for a lot of sober contemplation. I think, in my view and from my experience, I would say there are two issues that are at stake when we talk of research in Africa. One is a research regime or approach that is grounded in the realities of Africa, rather than one that tries to weigh and judge the realities of Africa from a Western normative perspective. And this is a big problem, because we still read as our compulsory texts the research methods textbooks that originated from the West, and we still read and apply the theories of those who theorized for their environment without any knowledge of Africa. And so we continue to force to panel beat the African reality to fit into the explanations that are foreign to them. And this is not good. And I have absolute respect for Western scholars for the good work they have done in research methods and in theorizing. But in all honesty, what they know in most cases just does not speak to the realities of Africa. So, and I think, and this has been said many times, that the grand approach to research in Africa does a lot of injustice to our situation. So that is the first thing. So we've had to adopt a methodology, a philosophy, a perspective that is grounded in our realities. The second is that there is this very wide gap between researchers in Africa and policymakers and policy actors. And Africans do a lot of good research, but then they end up on the pages of the academic journals and theses. Who uses this research? I mean, just doing research and making recommendations to policymakers do not change anything. So we need a regime of critical policy engaged research, not just policy relevant research in Africa. And PASGA is responding deliberately to these two gaps that I have seen. So in our training, in the professional development training that I am part of, there is a lot of effort in taking knowledge from the West or from anywhere, wherever, including the East, but then ensuring that these are mere tools that may be applicable to the realities of Africa. If they do not, then we leave them. Second is that there is a module on how researchers can do research that influences policy, and this is two of the ways by which I believe PASGA has been responding to the situation of research in Africa.
Okay, great. So, like you said, PASGA has done a great job. This is the 23rd, 24th cohort, and it's been amazing. What will be the impact story, or what is the impact story that you share with us?
Well, I can speak for myself. I can also tell stories that people have shared with me. I was trained in PASGA in 2012 and 13. It spilled over to 13, and I've been a facilitator from that time. Many things have happened, but one is the turnaround that has happened to my teaching of research. And I've been able to take a huge part of what I gained in PASGA and then cascaded that to the contents of my research methods class, so that my students then are better equipped than I was when I was at their level to do good research, to do policy engaged research, and to follow up even with distributing this research in ways that reach policy actors. So that is very key for me. The second is that PASGA, my involvement with PASGA has equipped me to go beyond research in communication studies, which is my area. I've been able to collaborate with other people and now in other disciplines, and now we are doing research that are not strictly communication. We have done research on community-based crime prevention, and I led the team, but then I had to bring in other people who are interested in, or who are qualified and with whom I can work. And that also involved partnership with people from as far away as El Salvador in Latin America. So that is one of the things. I mean, just to say that no matter what the discipline, no matter what the context, a good research is a good research, and good design is good design. It's not a property of a particular discipline or a particular context. And I think that is really very important. As a matter of fact, the first thing we learn in PASGA is you have to come out of your disciplinary cocoon to be able to network and to be able to do critical imagination about the situations in which we live.
So, assuming I give you $2 million, what key thing will you do in terms of research in Africa?
Well, if I have $2 million, that's a lot of money. Believe you me, the first thing I am going to do is to ensure that as many Africans as possible go through this training. And I am going to, now tell me as soon as the money finishes. Maybe that's going to be, maybe I'm going to devote half of the money to that. And I believe that with 100 million naira, did you say 200 million? $2 million. With $1 million, then you can train another cohort of about 400 or more Africans. And then I'll follow this up with practical funded research that allows them to immediately apply what they learned here. So that here, by the time you come for this training and you finish, you have a concept note that is really ready to fly, like a research proposal that is ready to fly. Now I'm going to ensure that the money funds those research so that they do not die as ideas, as good ideas, but then that they take on shape and they are able to they get published and completed and published.
Great. So in the next 5 years, what should we be expecting from PASGA, especially through the PDS program?
Yeah, I think the PDT program, I imagine. Now, this offering, that is this diet that is going on, is significant in many ways. This is the first regional diet that is going on. Cohort 1 to 22. All were trained in Nairobi. This is the first time we're having this training outside of Nairobi. And I believe this will be a success. Therefore, it will encourage PASGA to move further afield to other regions. And you see, when you take a training to people's regions, then financial difficulties is reduced. Then more and more people will do that. So I think in the next 5 years, I expect that PASGA is going to be able to reach and equip many more people. Now they're also going to need to begin to track these people more deliberately. Yeah.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Prof. And we are so much grateful for the good job that you are doing.
$2 million.
See me in chambers for that. All right, great. So we just finished speaking with Prof, and he's requesting for his $2 million, and it's been an exciting and insightful discussions with him, taking his journey on the PDT program. So now, keep watching AAU Television. My name is Kwesi Sam.
Are you an institution or individual? Do you intend to organize a memorable event to be archived for future reference? Then look no further than AAU Studios, because it's your best bet with our spacious studio and state-of-the-art media equipment such as 4K Panasonic video cameras, KinoFlow lights, assorted microphones, live streaming equipment, among others. You are sure to get the best of productions. Visit us at Trinity Avenue, East Legon, adjacent the National Accreditation Board, or contact the AAU Studios via the following email addresses: info@aau.org, AAUTV@aau.org, or ransford@aau.org. Alternatively, you can call us on +233 244 736280.
Hey, so this is Dishant from Unica University Common Application. I recommend you to watch AAU Television.
AAU TV is the place to be for every person in higher education in Africa. Better be there or be nowhere.
Continuez de regarder la télé et surtout sur le AAU. Keep watching it and it will change the way you interact with higher education on the continent. AAU, great job.
I want to tell you that AAU Television is fantastic. It's educative, it's informative, and it is a must for anybody who is interested in higher education in Africa.
When I was in Accra last year, I did an interview on this TV. It's a very important mouthpiece.
It's a data, it's a bank of all we need for the development of higher education in Africa.
People should make an effort to view it because it discusses very current issues of development across the continent.
I believe that the station will continue to promote the overall development of Africa, particularly in the tertiary education sector.
AAU TV provides a platform and shares a lot of information to a broader audience. So we wish you all the best and please continue serving
AAU TV, the voice of higher education in Africa.
Hello and welcome to the maiden edition of the Agenda 2063 series on African Continental Free Trade Area. We're happy to be here in a discussion on the Continental Free Trade Area and why it's so important. Very quickly after I'm done, we're going to quickly go into the segment which looks at the Africa Peer Review Mechanism, why it's important in the context of Agenda 2063. When I return, we'll have a quick discussion with an introduction of our guests who will help us understand why today's maiden show is so important.
Are you an institution or individual? Do you intend to organize a memorable event to be archived for future reference? Then look no further than AAU Studios, because it's your best bet with our spacious studio and state-of-the-art media equipment such as 4K Panasonic video cameras, KinoFlow lights, assorted microphones, live streaming equipment, among others. You are sure to get the best of productions. Visit us at Trinity Avenue, East Legon, adjacent the National Accreditation Board, or contact the AAU Studios via the following email addresses: info@aau.org, AAUTV@aau.org, or ransford@aau.org. Alternatively, you can call us on +233 244 736280.
All right, so welcome back from the break. Thank you for, once again, this association with the AAU TV, who are also on Facebook and YouTube. The whole idea right now with the Africa Peer Review Mechanism is that the Africa Peer Review Mechanism, as per a retreat in Addis Ababa in November 2018, it was decided by the Council of Ministers that the Africa Peer Review's mandate would be expanded to look more closely at African governance. So to that end, the mandate of the African Peer Review Mechanism was expanded. You will or may not know that the Africa Peer Review Mechanism started as far back as 2003, but it started 2003, and Ghana was one of the pioneers of the Africa Peer Review Mechanism. Why it's so important now when in the discussion of Agenda 2063 is because as in the year in which we are discussing silencing of the guns, which is the theme of the African Union right now, governance comes under question, and the African Peer Review Mechanism looms large, because right now, as per the Peace and Security Council resolution, recent one, 899th communique, it was stated quite clearly that member states should be encouraged to start encouraging themselves, peer review otherwise, to push forward the whole theme of African governance, including making sure that African member states accede to the peer review. Right now, we have around 38 member states that have acceded to the peer review mechanism. There are 55 member states of the AU, so there's still quite some work to do. So that by 2023, which is the hashtag for the Africa Peer Review Mechanism at the moment, there will be at least all the AU member states would have acceded to the Africa Peer Review Mechanism. For us, and for the conversation on Agenda 2063 is so important because the history will tell us that the Africa Peer Review Mechanism predicted the violence in Kenya in 2008. It also predicted the xenophobia that we have seen in South Africa. To that end, it's a very important conflict resolution tool. In Kenya at the moment, they are looking at counties, and how they can adopt it at the local level. We understand that an Africa Peer Review Mechanism team will be coming to Accra soon to have a second review of how parameters on governance are like. And so these are some of the things that we want to talk about in this segment of APRM Watch, so that people get a sense of why APRM is important and will continue to be an important element in the whole conversation on Africa's governance going forward. So that quickly rounds up the APRM Watch. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll return to the studio to our guests right here.
Kampala International University, you are the torch that lights above. In you we see a future bright, and by you the nation gaineth from services pure. The emblem that you chose is the message, unique in great and truly the giant.
so welcome back from the break. I'm very happy to have my two guests in the studio. To my right, I have Louis Yao Afo, who is Executive Director of the African Continental Free Trade Area, or AFTA Policy Network, Ghana and Diaspora. And then I also have to his right, Reverend Dr. Samuel Olanio Mensah, who is a staffer at Wisconsin University. He's a very big man. And he's also a director at the AFTA Policy Network. So gentlemen, welcome to the studios of Association of African University TV. Happy to have you here to have this very important discussion on the African Continental Free Trade Area. So the kind of questions really people want to know and want to start off with is why the Continental Free Trade Area, why the hosted in Ghana? What's so special about Ghana that it needs to be hosted right here? And then maybe you could segue that into helping us understand why your network was formed, because some little birdies have told me that in August 2019, the network was celebrated at an audience of Ministry of Trade and all these at the 3-day conference. And so help us to understand why it's become this apparently fastest growing network around the Continental Free Trade Area. So we're going to start off with you, Mr. Louis Yao Afo. Thank you for making time out of your busy schedule to speak with us.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here. And good morning to my colleague. Okay. Basically, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, it is the right time it should come, because Africa has been looking for an economic integration for a very long time. And over the years, there have been various regional blocks of integration, but Continental Free Trade Agreement sums it up all. It's not doing away with the existing trade agreements. It is rather coming to become an umbrella of all of them, whereby you have 54 member states coming together to trade. The importance of it is that at the end of the day, you're going to have a bigger economy. Unfortunately, though, we are still going to be closer to India, because then we're going to have the second largest free trade area after the World Trade Organization. Wow. And so that is key. And it's also significant because at the end of the day, it's going to boost a lot of exports, boost an intra-African trade, so that a lot of companies that were not able to do certain capacity of exports to the European market, to the American market, can now conserve within African markets. And you can have all the spiritual implications that will come because of such kind of agreement. For our network, it was formed because at the end of it, some of us were doing some consultancy for the African Union on the Continental Free Trade, and we realized that there is a need to put all stakeholders together. And so the network was formed to put together most of our professionals, with about 220 professionals globally who are on the network, and we use a different management system whereby people can contribute their expertise virtually, so virtual faces, virtual professional expertise, to implement a continental free trade by becoming a kind of an agency to governments and to institutions, private sector, and the public at large. And so we were recommended last year, August, as you mentioned, by the Chief Technical Advisor, or the head of the CFTA at that time, for championing the cause of continental free trade on the globe, or on African continent.
Fantastic. Let's stick still with education. Reverend Olanio Mensah, you teach at Wisconsin University, and I understand they do courses on international affairs and so on at the master's level and these kind of things. Maybe you can tell us, are the students familiar with this whole continental free trade area? And have they started, do they even know that it's coming to Ghana? And why, and if they don't, what is it that you think needs to quickly be done so that, some of your students can start appreciating the fact that, a huge organization under the AAU is coming to town?
Thank you very much. And I think by and large, you realize that Africa have seen some form of political independence for some time, and over the past decades, we've been struggling to gain an economic independence, and that is the only way that African countries can develop and be able to develop our potentials. So there is a need for us to do social orientations to be able to educate the public, our constituents, our various countries, our various states, as to why there is the need for us to do development in an integrated manner. So I think this whole program was designed by the Indian government in 1978, fully launched in 1980. But even India itself was not able to implement it well. So China needs to send its experts to understudy the whole program. And China is now a well-developed class economy in the world. And because in the 80s, you see China to be a very big village, but now China is now a level player industry in the world. Now, coming back to the model, you realize that there is the need for us to be able to bridge the gap between the rich and poor. And if really we want to eradicate poverty in our shores, then the only way for us to do is to be able to develop our potentials. Now, you realize that there are so many potentials in our individual countries, but these potentials has never been utilized effectively and efficiently. Meaning that there are systems, there are mechanisms, there are products that are in Ghana that may be needed in Benin or maybe South Africa. But because we have blocks, we have obstacles, we have barriers to this trade. So at the end of the day, we are only experiencing post-harvest losses. So we are not encouraging our various countries to go into industrialization, to be able to go into high level of productivity, to be self-sufficient. So at the end of the day, our farmers have become peasant farming. We have limited them to the use of tools like the cutlass and the hoes, because the market is not there. When they produce, there is no available market. So we're trying to remove these barriers so that we'll be able to give credence to whatever our productivity level is. When you look at the way our various domestic currencies are performing in the global market, you realize that it's as a result of not able to have this continental free trade. Because you realize that even currently our CD may be performing quite weak against the international trading currencies, simply because when you take the average productivity globally, we may be producing less. Our national productivity level may be less than the average global productivity level, and that may put some form of pressure on the domestic currency, thereby losing value. So what we are trying to do is that we develop a model, and the network tries to educate society, and we are educating various institutions, departments, ministries, and agencies, various universities, associations, and indeed, we are living in the global era, and only the shortest way is to make sure that informations reach the people at a timely season, and that will really help to transform society. So I think that the network has come as a game changer and is really affecting lives. So if you see the way it has really transformed, and I think that the network has really prepared the grounds, and that may be another reason for which Ghana is now being chosen to host the Secretariat.
Let's stick with the whole issue of value that you talked about. In its recent publication, UNCTAD, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, it was indicated that the whole continental free trade area cannot happen without the discussion on rules of origin and value addition. For a lot of people, this is just economic geek talk. Help us understand why a free trade area cannot happen. We need to have this whole value addition, rules of origin. What is rules of origin?
Now,
and we'll start off with you, and then we'll go to...
Now, you realize that for every developed country, there can be no development without peace. So the first factor, you're looking at peace, and that supposed to be our backrock for sustainable development. So when you look at the SDGs, you also realize that it's really an agenda that UN has really propelled for growth and development. And for that matter, when you also look at the challenges associated with it, you realize that the core problem that African countries are going through is that we are not able to develop our raw materials into a secondary production. So we are not adding value to our raw materials. So we just extract it and export. And once that you do that, then your economy will surely be operating on an import-led economy, meaning that you always experience balance of payment deficit because your imports are more than your exports. And once that is done, meaning that your economy will not be resilient. And once your economy is not resilient, you cannot develop. The only way you can develop, as President even is championing, is going beyond aid. And going beyond aid means that you should champion industrialization. And industrialization also goes with productivity. And the productivity, you realize that needs to use raw materials, which also depends highly on the agri sector. So once the agri sector is weak, your economy is likely to scramble. Now you realize that when there is a discovery of oil, oil economy normally tries to subvert the will of agri sector because everybody wants to make quick money. But then the agri sector really carries, it really holds the breath of every economy. So what we are trying to do and what the network is trying to do is that we are educating society, educating various industry players that now, look, we need to call a spade and not a big spoon. It's time that there is a saying that a blow inevitably yours when earlier received will extricate you from torrential hostilities, and we have no time to waste at all. What we must do now is that we must stop exporting our raw materials. We now need to draw programs and policies that the companies that are in US, UK, and all other places that are using our raw materials to manufacture or produce goods and commodities. Now we want them to come right here, set up the same companies here, produce one. When that is done, we have been able to solve the problem of unemployment. When that is done, we have been able to expand the economy. When that is done, we have been able to get more revenue. Once we receive more revenue, we have money for infrastructure development. When we do infrastructure development now, transportation becomes key because every production depends on transportation and energy. So you realize that we are championing the cost of energy. We need to be energy sufficient. So once that is done, you realize that we have really set the standard, the base for a divine takeoff.
And so, Reverend Molanyo, we're going to quickly unpack this thing that you talked about, transport. I'm going to revisit it in a moment. But I want to turn to you, Mr. Afo. So this whole exports, Reverend Molanyo Mensah talked about exports. Are exports the panacea for this value addition? Everyone now is talking about value addition. So you take your cocoa and then you add value to it. We've been doing it for many years and still making money. Why do we need to do anything extra to it? Why can't we just say, AFTA is now in Ghana, the Secretariat, let's manage it like that and we'll still get our money? Why do we need to press on the value addition?
I think that you asked about the rules of origin. The rules of origin basically are rules when you go to any free trade area that you have to satisfy a condition of taking a product from one country to another. So it's like before country A, you are exporting to country B. You might meet the conditions that country B is expecting concerning that product. And it's all about tariff rules. And so it's, if the product that you are sending meets its requirement, then of course, then it also gets back to tell you, does it meet a certain standard of tariff akin to that product? Or if that product is refused entry into the country, why? So the rules of origin enables the kind of rules and laws that governs tariff concessions, tariff areas, and what have you. Now you talked about value additions. It's very important. It has been there. Yes, it has been there. But you know, like Reverend Doctor said, African economies have always been raw. The world has gone beyond even secondary products to tertiary, to service. It has even gone beyond tertiary to service industries. The developed countries have finished even service industry and they don't know even what to do and have even come back to recessions. The problem is that I always keep on saying that even if you look at Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage, where we are picking the value additions from, Ricardo's theory is obsolete. Why? Because Ricardo was looking at the theory at the time that capital was immobile. But now capital is mobile under globalization. And so people and economies are restructuring their bases well, such that if I can do within cocoa sector, what are the stages of additions that can be gained, which can form basis of stages of employment avenues, so that if I take cocoa as a product itself, and maybe you take about 5 people or 5 categories of chains. One can be the cocoa beans itself. The second can be a manufacturing base for producing cocoa powder, meal, whatever you. The next stage could be out of that. Some can also use it for medicinal purposes. Then another. That is the chains. That's the value addition chains. Okay. So at the end of the day, it creates at every value stage employment, at every value stage benefit, at every value stage something out of it. Now, one important thing that doctor said about, and I just want to throw more light, is that you see, basically, you have to identify a product and a market. In order to really benefit from the continental free trade, you have to identify a product and its market. Africa used to export products to European Union and then US and what have you, but they were not getting a lot of value in return because it was not a finished product with serious value additions. And so what happened was that at the end of the day, they always have quotas restricting the type of the quantity that's supposed the quantity that's supposed to come to the market. Now with the continental free trade, you are not looking too far. You are doing intra-African trade.
Right now it's very low, 10, 11, 12%
yes.
or so.
So for example, if Ghana, West Africa here, you couldn't have exported school uniforms to maybe Europe. In Ghana, now with the continental free trade coming, to boost export, you can identify Nigerian market and say that, look, I want to export uniforms. Look at the market, about 200 million people. And so you couldn't have taken it to Europe. But under the free trade, free movement of goods and services, if it meets the criteria, the rules of origin, and you're able to export it freely under that category, immediately your export base is enlarged, and you create you create job for people. Then again, you can look at, let's go to country like Ethiopia. They like the market of aluminium, utensils. It is so much here. You identify the product, you identify the market. You look at something like Seychelles, which depends so much on Brazil for butter. And you say, look, I want to manufacture butter to Seychelles. You quickly, it creates a startup for you. And so the export we are talking about is to conserve the foreign exchange that Dr. Walanya was talking about, so that it will not come from outside, but there will be intra-African trade. So for example, if you were able to export 20% to European market, and your cost of export, the rate of export was too high. Now with the African Continental Free Trade protocols, you will conserve that 80% within Africa, and your cost of export rate becomes a bit lower. So therefore, it means that it enables you to have such kind of revenues.
Okay, so we're going to quickly take a break, and we'll be right back.
4 years ago, like most young people, I was clueless as to what I wanted to do and which institution would help me realize a great career. What better place to pursue this dream than Blue Crest College? With state-of-the-art lecture halls and experienced lecturers, as well as equipped computer labs, Blue Crest is indeed the right starting point. With certificate, diploma and degree programs in information technology, business administration, journalism, oil and gas, Blue Crest is the one-stop institute for everyone who is looking to have a great career. Enroll now. Visit www.bluecrest.edu.gh or call any of the numbers on the screen. Blue Crest College. Education for life.
Welcome back from the break. Thank you once again. Let me just quickly remind you that the Association of African Universities is on YouTube. You can also find them on Facebook, and we'll be communicating the Twitter handles very shortly. But just back to our guests, Reverend Walanya Mensah and Mr. Luziao Afo. Just want you to quickly land on the point that you were making about Seychelles and butter. Seychelles and butter. I mean,
Seychelles depends on Brazil for butter. They are on an island. I'm saying that it is imperative upon, if Ghana want to benefit, or any other African country, you identify the product first and the market, so that will boost your intra-African exports. And I'm saying that when the export of 80% cost rate is here, it helps you to conserve your revenue.
Okay. Here on the continent, that's what you're talking
previously when you were spending your revenue pay against your cost, because the cost of export rates going outside Africa is so high that you get little even out of it. And I'm saying that with the intra-African trade, you get the product for the right market, and then you increase your volume to 80%, and then your cost of export rate becomes low, and then you conserve, because then you'll be able to have more revenue for employment. So I'm saying that it is up to member states to be able to identify what product I'm selling where, including IT, startups, the kind of Silicon Valleys that we have can be here. I know right now a lot of the youth coming out with strong apps for various solutions, not hardwares, even apps that can solve societal problems and what have you. These are areas that we need. And then finally, you realize that we are talking about export, we are not talking about commodity goods alone, we are talking about skills. So under connected free trade, because we say freedom of movement of people. So we are saying that if you are in Ghana, for example, Mauritius is about 85% service industry. And I'm saying that if you finish your profession, you're in banking, and you realize that maybe the job market here is choked, you can move to associates under the protocol of free movement of people and go and work there. So you export your skills.
Viewers, I hope you have been listening very carefully to the discussions that we've been having. Right now, you don't have to, Ghana is no longer your home. Africa is no longer an island unto itself. You can move across the continent freely. Already we have it with ECOWAS. Visa-free in ECOWAS, visa-free in East Africa. The other regions are struggling a bit, but we'll get there. The Freedom of Movement Protocol is an important discussion that we definitely need to have. Let me just quickly remind you that you can drop your comments on the Association of African University TV. You can find it on YouTube. You can also find it on Facebook. You can also do a quick search of it on Twitter. I will give you the specific handles for Twitter very shortly. But just to let you know that there's a lot of hope along the horizon. And so just let us know the kind of thoughts, the fears, the issues that you think we may need to address along the continental free trade area. But let me just quickly get back to you, Reverend Wodani-Mensah. All of these nice things that you're talking about, it's very nice. It's great discussions, economic theories, value addition, and so on. But couldn't this just simply have been addressed by bringing together some experts to have a conversation? And why does Ghana even feature in it at all? Why do we need the whole secretariat located in a country like Ghana to ensure that these things can happen? Why don't we just bring experts together and say this is what we need to do?
Thank you very much. I think even the bears even have a resting place. So administratively, it's laudable that once you have a vision, you should be able to have a station as to where when everybody wants to find out an information, should be able to get such data or information from a particular point. Now, notwithstanding that, you realize that the continental free trade is not only selling our goods, but it equally promoting FDI, foreign direct investments. Yes. So what we are trying to do is to encourage our entrepreneurs, our businessmen and women who have the potentials and the capacity. Even various governments can equally help them to establish the subsidiary companies in the African sub-region. Okay. So if assuming that we have a company like maybe Coca-Cola that wanted to have a subsidiary in Togo or in Benin, in Nigeria, we are also ready to encourage. So the Secretariat is going to serve and is really going to service everybody's concern. So what we are also looking at is that once we are able to encourage foreign direct investment, it's really going to solve the problem of unemployment. Okay. Because what we have seen is that because much of the youths are unemployed, we have allowed them to engage in other criminal activities. Some have joined Boko Haram and all others. Most at times just because the jobs are not there. So they just want to find an ends meet. So what we are trying to do is that we need to solve the problems bottom-up approach. Yes. We really want to take power, authority, development from our various governments, our political leaders, down to business leaders. And that is the only way that the continent can really develop.
Our time is almost up, and I'm going to hold you on the whole idea of the business and private sector, which would be the topic for the next for the continuation of this in the next edition. The whole idea of the business and private sector. So I just wanted to hold you to that, so that viewers would expect to see you again in the next edition.
Exactly.
So go ahead.
So you realize that the private sector is the engine of growth, and once that the private sector fails to function, the whole governance fails to function. So what we need to do now is to encourage individuals who are entrepreneurs, who have the zeal, who have the ambition, who have the vision, who have the foresight to go into a high level of productivity, production, and that of manufacturing. So we are equally encouraging, and already the Secretariat has not fully started operation, but the kind of services the network is providing may be equal to the same services that the Secretariat may fully render when it's fully implemented. So what we are trying to do is that those who have very big businesses, companies and others, this is the time, this is the opportunity for us. We should really put our houses in order, because we are about to take action.
And so in wrapping up, let me just quickly say that, and I'll turn to you, Mr. Afo, and then I'll come to you, that there was some information going around from the Economist Intelligence Unit that it is unlikely that the Continental Free Trade Area will be launched July 2020 because of the usual things that are happening on the continent, peace issues and so on and so forth. What's your take on that, so that we can use that to launch the next discussion?
I mean, that is an assertion, but that might not necessarily be true, because it's like a normal stock exchange. What do you need to open a stock exchange? When the members are present, or the traders or the brokers are inside the chamber or inside the trading hall, and the bell is rang, you start the stock exchange. In the same way, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, member states have ratified already. Okay, and we needed a certain number. We have 28 needed to ratify. They've ratified. All we need to do is the host country, the president, will inaugurate the building and say that this has now been inaugurated. It becomes an independent body of the African Union, and therefore, what happens again? Ceremony is done and trading starts. There will be hitches along the line, but this is not where it's like going from a physical market to another physical market. No, you have representatives. If you have compliance issues, the Secretariat is functioning. They have their staff filled already, and you can make a compliance issues. Just as trading has been going on already on the borders, the only difference is that at the end of the day, the rules of origin would take time for people to acquaint themselves with it, because like I said earlier, you have about 500 pages of rules of origins that are going to be given to customs of various member states. So it's not going to be, it will surely be open for trade.
And equally, some people are speculating that we will not be able to meet the convergent criteria, and various political leaders may not have the political will to execute or to support. But that is an old Michael Jackson tune, and we are ever ready for action.
All right. So it looks like, according to to deliver intra-African trade to move 11-12% to 52, 53, 54%, that the